The AFCFTA Secretariat and the Republic of Djibouti recently hosted the Regional Conference on Special Economic Zones in Djibouti City, focusing on the role of special economic zones in advancing intra-African trade under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. The event highlighted Djibouti's strategic position as a logistics hub on the Red Sea and underscored the importance of aligning SEZ development with the AFCFTA to enhance competitiveness and market access across the continent.
So let's talk about this conference. I think perhaps let's begin with the key outcomes of some of the deliberations that came from here.
I think what really came out for us were three tangible outcomes. One, we had an opportunity to talk about special economic zones, which has been one of those topics within the agreement, have really found itself at some point a bit of a challenge because, as you know, special economic zones are created for domestic markets and they've got their own set of investment because the country wants to invest in certain sectors and to ensure that the sector grows. But what we found with this conference is that there was a full appreciation that special economic zones can be utilized under the AFCFTA agreement, and they can be utilized, importantly, to accelerate the industrialization agenda of this continent. Secondly, we also talked about issues of skills development, something that we sometimes neglect because we're looking at the bigger picture around infrastructure, financing, and we forget those small issues like skills development. What kind of skills do we need in this continent to really upgrade and leverage on the special economic zones to ensure that we really meet the needs of the tailored sectors that needs to grow? Thirdly, which was also very important, it was a lesson to all of us, especially us at the Secretariat, that it's important for us to remember not to leave anybody behind. Even the small to medium economies that we have in this continent needs to be fully integrated, need to really participate under the agreement and fully take advantage of this agreement for the benefit of all.
So one of the points that came out to me during one of the debates that I moderated was around the need for greater collaboration between stakeholders. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about what the Secretariat is doing around that work.
There's a lot of work that the Secretariat is doing. I think for the very first time, we've got a dedicated unit that's focused on private sector, for example, to ensure that whatever size of the private sector is also informed, educated, but importantly, it also participates in this journey of transforming the economy of this continent. And that's important. So we also looked at non-state parties, the public sector, the NGOs, those who are interested. I would make a practical example. We now have relationship with certain academic institutions where it's imperative for us as we do our outreach program to really get them involved so that the young people of this continent not only read about what this agreement is about, but they get to really absorb what it means, because at the end of the day, they probably will be the biggest beneficiary of this agreement, and it's important for them to know what this entails, because the future of the continent really, really relies on them having a full understanding on the agreement.
Let's talk about that advocacy work then.
You know, in 2023, we were, let me go back. In 2023, the African Union established a theme for the year, and we were the theme of the year for the African Union at the time. And it was around the full implementation of the AFCFTA agreement. We realized then in 2023 that even the political heads, the political principles of this continent really wanted each and every member of this continent to know what this agreement is all about. At the end of the day, as our Secretary General always says, governments do not trade. It is ordinary people who do the trading. And that's why it's important for each and every member of society in this continent to understand what this agreement is all about. But secondly, why we really embarked on this advocacy program, it also helped us as the Secretariat to also receive feedback from communities. Because as we go out and talk to them about the different protocols and the different policy frameworks that have been agreed upon by all member states, it's important for them to also give us feedback around the implementation of some of these protocols, because it's easy for us as policymakers to sit around tables and decide this work, that doesn't work in the main with governments. But the guys who have then to implement those policies, those regulatory frameworks to be taken advantage will be ordinary citizens of this continent. So we receive that feedback to say, we hear you, good protocol, but to implement it, we are lagging behind on A, B, and C, and that's where we come up with good instruments, for example, that will help us really enable them to take advantage of this agreement.
Absolutely. So Djibouti is done, dusted. What's next?
What's next is the Digital Trade Forum that will be taking place from the 8th to the 10th of May 2025 in Lusaka, Zambia. We're excited because after the digital protocol was finally approved by the heads of states this year, it's an exciting protocol because I always believe that if anything, the digital platform could give us an opportunity to leapfrog as this continent. But importantly, we've got the biggest, wonderful supporters of this digital platform, who are the young people of this continent. And they're already doing great work. So we want them to come and join this organization of young people with a full appreciation of what the digital protocol is all about and the implementation of it. There are quite a number of benefits that will come into it, but we also want them to be heard. I want to emphasize that point. We're an organization led by a Secretary General who believes strongly that we cannot be the only ones that determine the journey. We have to make sure that each and every partner, the young people of this continent, the mothers of this continent, everybody should also give their say in how we work together to fully implement the agreement.
So an interesting discussion that we had there around how we can use special economic zones to increase intra-African trade. From an FCFTA secretariat perspective, how can this be done effectively?
Well, special economic zone is a very instrumental, very important tool that the African countries can use to restructure their economic development plans and to accelerate the economic transformation in Africa. Many countries, they choose their own model of developing special economic zone based on their geographical location or the availability of the natural resources or the availability of the industries they have. And in a way, they can design their special economic zone to bring together maybe supply chain for a certain industry or to be in approximately for exporting boards or maybe neighboring countries. And that is a tool that can be used within the framework of the AFCFTA. Recently, our Council of Ministers adopted a special economic zone regulation that allowed the African countries to benefit from establishing SEZ in their countries and benefiting from the market access that the AFCFTA is providing.
But how do the countries compete, as it were, while at the same time working together? Because the greater project is, of course, increasing intra-African trade and regional economic integration.
Well, it is not competition. It is not harmful competition in our view. We have a very rich continent. We have different regions in Africa that specialize in a different production, different natural resources. For example, the tea and coffee in the east and the cocoa in the west, the manufacturing capabilities in the north and in the south, and the African countries can complement each other. And the second point is the competition itself is not a bad thing to have. The harmful competition and the unfair practices of trade is something that we should be worried about, and the AFCFTA has embedded in its structure, tools and the legal provisions that can fight that. But competitive market or competition in the market is something that we are looking for.
Special economic zones, of course, have been with us for quite a long time, since the 1950s, in fact, and we are trying to make them practical in this environment where we are seeing increasing nationalism, as it were, around trade. How do we make sure that we introduce innovations that enable us to be able to take advantage of the current crisis that we are seeing around global trade now?
Well, African countries, they need to market their own countries to attract investment on the special economic zones based on the opportunity that the AFCFTA is providing. In other words, each country now will be able to go to the international community and attract investment with a promise that you come and invest in my country and have access to other 54 African countries. That is the first step. The second step, you attract investment in a meaningful industries, in the industries that fit your available resources, fit your economic transformation project. You don't attract investment for maybe investors that is looking only to bring products from outside Africa and benefit from your market. You need to bring meaningful and impactful industries and investments.
We're here, of course, in Djibouti, a country that has had special economic zones for quite a while. What kind of trends are you seeing in terms of countries adopting special economic zones as a tool to try to increase their trade with other parts of the world?
Well, Djibouti is an example. Actually, it is a brilliant example of choosing and selecting a type of special economic zone that work for Djibouti. So for the geographic location of Djibouti, they opted for the model of free zones with more focus on services and logistics. And that allowed them to be one of the key windows for example, for the export and import for a country like Ethiopia, to be a gateway, a significant gateway for East Africa. And that is the model of free zone, or model of the zone that they selected. We learned today that they have already in the pipeline plans to upgrade and create more zones that focus on industries with plans to have a dedicated city around it and to attract maybe the labor force that is required for SEZ. So it is a very, very brilliant and very promising model.
Amid global trade volatility, building resilience for African economies remains paramount. According to the World Bank, fully implementing the AFCFTA could boost Africa's foreign direct investment by 68%, and external investment by 122%. And through the regional value chains that are being developed under the AFCFTA, member states could enhance global competitiveness, pursue export diversification, and increase exports of high value-added manufactured goods. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Focus On.